So in this video, I'm going to make these tin snips awesome, no longer rusty, and I'm going to clean them up and put them to some good use. These ones actually weren't too bad. It looks like there was just a few nicks in the teeth as far as cutting, and then obviously the rust buildup. And I want to make these useful. I got these at the thrift store for just a couple bucks, and yeah, they should be great tin snips. So first, it required that I disassemble them. What's nice about these tin snips is all of them were bolts really holding it together. No pins or anything like that that needed to be punched through. Just undoing all these bolts, nuts, taking them out. Now the second one actually was a little more difficult here, and I'm going to show kind of what it takes. Sometimes when you run into a bolt like this that's not forgiving, a little bit of WD-40 sometimes helps. So it was a good time to lube the other ones that I hadn't taken off yet. Sometimes it's just a couple hits breaks up that rust bond that's developed in the threads. And in this case it was still difficult. Because it's that flathead screw also, it's really hard. I didn't want to strip out these bolts. They're marked with Wiss also on it, which is the brand of these tin snips. And I wanted to keep those nice. Putting it in the vise worked, and you can see that it's starting to turn now here. The vise is now working as my wrench, holding the bolt on the other side, and it allows me to put a lot more direct pressure down on that nut, and I'm slowly getting it out. This was the only one that I really had to do this way that was really locked of these three screws. And this one came out just fine. Now once I had these out, these tin snips are spring loaded, and I wanted to be careful as I pounded them out. I didn't want the spring going flying. I wasn't sure what would quite happen, so I wanted it to just pound it flush, and then I used channel locks to pull all the pins out. And it was nice. Nothing went flying, so that was good. Now for the, I don't know, the pivot nut, I don't know what you would call it. Now this one, instead of using two wrenches, I just used my bench also. And now that I had it all disassembled, it was time to soak it in Evapo-rust. And just to clean up the rust, I left this for 24 hours in the Evapo-rust, and it did a great job, just like it always does, even though my Evapo-rust is quite saturated in rust. Like I've said in past videos, the Evapo-rust in 1 gallon is capable of absorbing up to half a pound of rust. And I'm pretty sure I haven't done that yet. The Evapo-rust is still working great. There was nothing wrong with the rust cleanup on these. Mind you, they weren't as rusted as some of the other tools I've thrown in there before. So once I had it all cleaned up, dried up, the kind of slime that's on the Evapo-rust when you're done, I took it to my drill press with a wire brush and just polished everything up, cleaned it up. Got kind of an even look and shined up all the nuts. Everything kind of shined up just fine in most areas. I then cleaned up kind of the nicks that were in the snipping surface. I didn't want to file away the, I don't know what you'd call it, but the grooves that were on the snipping surface, but I did want to take out the nicks that were in there so that they weren't interfering with cutting of the tin snips. Once I had cleaned everything up, I did do a little bit of sandpaper there, and now I'm cleaning it up with isopropyl alcohol to get any of the grease and oils off before I go to the Perma Blue. I want to use Perma Blue, and you'll see it here. So Perma Blue, I've been really impressed with this product. One, I like the color that it gives to metal, and just what it does. So typically it's used for gun barrels on older guns and things like that to give it kind of this blue texture. It also protects it from rust. It's an oxidizing process similar to rust, but it's one that looks cooler, unless you like the look of rust, I guess. But it will protect it from rusting in the future and gives it this nice durable finish of kind of this gray look that I think is cool. So when you apply the Perma Blue, it works fine just using cotton swabs. You do want to make sure you clean all the surfaces. If you do have any oils and things like that, it won't blue as well in those areas, so you make sure you get it cleared. But rubbing it on, just following the directions on the bottle is great. And once you've coated everything in a nice layer of the liquid from the Perma Blue, and it just kind of causes the chemical reaction, then you want to go at it with some triple-aught steel wool and just kind of rub it down. That kind of helps even out the bluing and kind of gives it a light polish also. And I actually quite liked the way this looked, the gray tools, especially on the snips, on the teeth. It cleaned up really well. Now, in assembling this back together, I found that these tin snips were actually very clever design. Instead of having two locking nuts holding the two pieces of the snip together, one end is actually a nut also, and it's threaded. So you thread the threads in to the point where you want to hold the teeth together, and then a lock nut is applied on the other side. So here I'm screwing it into the threads on, I don't know, we could call it the bottom side of the tin snips that have the threads, threading it in till it's just right for the teeth to close, the right tension, and then applying the bolt on the back is really a lock nut. It's going to lock those two pieces together, and then you want to lock it in such a way that you can still pivot it. And this I took to the bench just to give me a second hand. So it helped me to hold the bottom nut stable in the location that it was at while I tightened down the lock nut on the threaded part of the snips. And you can see here I tightened it down. It was a little too tight. I had to loosen it up just a smidgen. And I need to lock it in there, and then it was quite good. And the snips are done. Now it was time to reassemble. And this took a little persuasion. Persuasion's maybe the right word. With the spring loaded, it wants to push the snips in the front back out. And so it took just a little bit of hammer persuasion to get that first one in. The second one wasn't as bad. The alignment was a little better after getting the first one in. And then it was just a matter of tightening things down and getting them nice and snug. You can hear my son playing the piano in fast forward in the background. It'll always be a part of my videos as long as the piano's right outside the garage. Not quite right outside the garage, but not far away. And there they're back together. All good. And now, this is a product that I think has kind of a bad rap, and I've never used it, Plasti-Dip. But I thought this would be a good one. I didn't want to leave the handles on these tin snips bare. I did want to have a rubber grip. I think they're a little more versatile that way. And so I thought I'd give this stuff a try. And why not use blue? It's a great color. And with this, I had to mix it up beforehand. Like I said, I haven't used it before, and I was kind of not expecting it to be so separated. But then the process is dipping whatever you're putting the Plasti-Dip on really slowly. They say like 5 seconds for every inch that you dip in and out. And this was just the first coat. I let it dry for 30 minutes. I did 2 more coats after that, and it would just drip. The bottom of the grips were much more covered than the top when it came out in the end. But I thought it was just fine. So now they're really done, and it's just a matter of, I wanted to test them out. I didn't have any good pieces of tin to test it out, but I did have this bracket that I could cut that wasn't needed. And that finishes it up. And one, I really like the way the Perma Blue finished off the steel. I love that gray color, especially against the blue from the Plasti-Dip. The Plasti-Dip was just fine. It is a little thin closer to the head, and that's the way I hung it with the bottom of the grip down. The bottom of the grip's got more Plasti-Dip on it, but it worked out good. And it was cool to give these tin snips that were donated some new life. So, like and subscribe if you haven't already, and look for opportunities to give those old things new life. And we'll see you on the next video. Ciao.